This is Donald J. Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States. On July 4th, 2025, Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law, and despite all of their efforts, the Democrats were not able to stop it. So now, Democrat influencers are preparing for the 2026 midterms by spreading misinformation and disinformation about what's in the bill. Here's Brian Tyler Cohen.
Okay, we have to talk about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, because there is so much lies, so much disinformation about those three things.
Because there is so much lies? Is that even English, Brian?
First of all, no tax on Social Security doesn't exist. Donald Trump, Carolyn Levitt, all these Republicans keep on saying it. It is a figment of their imagination. They did not eliminate taxes on Social Security. It was made up.
It was made up? Of course it wasn't, Brian. Which is ironic, given the name of your disinformation podcast. As reported by Axios, after adding the recipients of the new tax break, 88% of seniors won't be paying any Social Security tax. In other words, Social Security taxes are being eliminated for 88% of seniors. So who is paying Social Security taxes, you ask? Well, that would be individual seniors who earn over $175,000 a year and couples who earn over $250,000. They will not see a tax break. I think they'll probably be fine. Trump promised to eliminate tax on Social Security income. Lawmakers couldn't pull that off entirely, given the constraints of passing a reconciliation bill and changing Social Security law. And notice how Brian didn't bother to offer any of those details. Instead, he lied about it and quickly moved on. I know you're shocked. In the meantime, let's take a look at all of the legislation that the Democrats have introduced that would completely eliminate Social Security taxes for everyone. Oh right, there isn't any. And I would like to point out that every single Democrat in Congress voted against the OBBB, which means that they voted against tax relief for seniors. But please, Brian, complain more about Trump and the Republicans.
Second, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. No tax on tips and no tax on overtime are in the bill.
So they didn't lie then.
No tax on tips is capped at $25,000 a year.
Being able to deduct $25,000 from your federal income tax, that's a lot of money. And according to the US News and World Report, in 2025, the median salary for waiters and waitresses was $31,940. And if a waitress makes, say, $35,000, she would normally be placed in the 12% tax bracket. However, thanks to President Trump and the Republicans, she is able to deduct $25,000, which moves her into the 10% tax bracket. And I should point out that that waitress's yearly income isn't strictly from tips. It's also from the state-tipped minimum wage, which varies from state to state. So she could be getting $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 or more on top of whatever tips that she makes.
No tax on overtime is capped at $12,500 per year. That's the limit.
Democrats constantly complain about tax breaks for the rich, yet they can't even be honest when Republicans create tax policy that overwhelmingly and specifically benefits lower to middle income earners.
Every dollar you make above those rates, which by the way, $25,000 a year and $12,500 a year, those are still considered poverty wages. Every dollar above that is taxed normally.
First of all, the federal poverty guideline is $15,650 a year, which means that if you're making $25,000 in tips or $12,500 in overtime alone, you're not making poverty wages. Second, why is he comparing a tax deduction to yearly income? Because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
They gave the bare minimum. They said, here are the poverty level wages that we're willing to waive the taxes on, but everything above $12,500 is going to be taxed as normal.
Is he really complaining that an American worker can only deduct $12,500 in overtime pay? How much overtime does Brian Tyler Cohen think that the average hourly employee receives? Proving once again that when it comes to working class Americans, the Democrats are still completely out of touch. Good luck in the midterms, Democrats.
One more thing they did, they sunsetted it in 2028, meaning they gave themselves, these millionaires and billionaires, a massive tax cut, and it's permanent.
Let's take a look at how the tax cuts work. In 2017, Trump signed into law tax rates that overwhelmingly benefited the middle class. If you made less than $38,700, your top tax rate changed from 15% to 12%. If you made less than $82,500, your top tax rate changed from 25% to 22%. And if you made $500,000 or more, your top tax rate was lowered from 39.6% to 37%, which, quite frankly, is still a lot. What Trump and the Republicans did was make those tax cuts permanent, because otherwise, the Trump tax cuts would have expired, and nearly everyone in the country would have seen a significant tax increase, as we would have reverted back to Obama-era tax rates. Only a Democrat would claim that a 2.6% cut is massive, while at the same time claim that a 3% cut is crumbs.
But they gave your $25,000 and $12,500 those crumbs, a 3-year period. That's it. That's all they could afford to give you.
Brian is upset that Republicans were able to pass any kind of tax relief. But I would like to point out that when the Democrats voted for the so-called American Rescue Plan in 2021 or the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, which had nothing to do with inflation reduction, there was zero effort by the Democrats to give Americans a tax break on tips or overtime. And in 2025, every single Democrat voted against helping seniors, tipped workers, or people who receive overtime to let them keep more of their money.
A few crumbs that they would sunset after 3 years when their tax cuts, their major tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, are permanent.
Again, everyone's tax rates are permanent, you loser. But yes, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime end in 2028, and it's kind of brilliant. Think about it. Who ran in 2024 on those policies and who implemented them? It was the Republicans.
No tax on tips. No tax on tips.
And so in 2028, every Republican can campaign on extending no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. And you know who can't? The Democrats, because every single Democrat in the House and Senate voted against it. Womp womp.
No taxes on tips, which is part of this bill for working people who work on a tipped wage. Do you support that?
You know, I haven't looked seriously at it because I haven't thought they were serious about it.
Next, let's check in on everyone's favorite Democrat boomer political influencer, PoliticsGirl.
I have been lying to you.
Yes, we know.
That is the feedback I keep getting from right-wing and MAGA commentators in my socials.
Oh, well, technically their feedback is correct.
They call me a whiny, crazy Karen, a nut job that should be locked up.
I mean...
They say I'm deranged and bullshitting and an uninformed liar.
Politics Grandma isn't an uninformed liar. She's just a liar, period. Otherwise, the MAGA comment section is correct.
That people aren't going to lose their health care. That the only people who won't get Medicaid when the big beautiful bill passes are illegal immigrants and all those able-bodied Americans who have been living off it without getting a job. No children are going to lose their health insurance, no elderly, no disabled people, no single parents already working 3 jobs. That it is me who has lost her grip on reality. And if I am scared and unhappy, then that must mean it is an awesome bill.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then why did Republican Senator Josh Hawley say this?
Half of the hospitals in my state are rural. So, I mean, that's a huge number. We've already lost a bunch of rural hospitals. And what leadership told me over and over is we're working on a fix for rural hospitals. I don't see anything in there to that effect. Nothing.
I mean, he still voted for the bill, but he knows it's going to f people over.
No, Senator Hawley voted for the bill because 9 days after he made that statement, Republicans made changes to the healthcare language and added a $50 billion rural hospital fund.
How do you think voters in Missouri feel hearing you say all that and then vote for it anyways?
Well, I hope that they feel that and recognize they're going to get $1 billion more in rural hospital funding in the next 4 years because of our efforts. Missouri is actually going to see an increase of $1 billion for rural hospitals from now to the end of the decade because of this legislation, and specifically because of provisions that we got put into legislation.
I have been lying to you.
Why did Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski say it was agonizing to vote for this bill?
Because she's a grandstanding drama queen who has to make everything about herself? No one cares about Lisa Murkowski, so let's just move on.
At least Republican Senator Tom Tillis was brave enough to vote against it, saying,
"So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there?"
Just for the record, Senator Tom Tillis was brave enough to vote against the One Big Beautiful Bill, but not brave enough to run for re-election, all because Trump wrote mean tweets about him. As a reminder, Senator Tillis voted for Biden's Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which provides funding to states who implement red flag laws. He also voted for the needless Respect for Marriage Act, and he supports a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Senator.
Even the far-right's favorite billionaire, Elon Musk, has been screaming about how bad this bill is. Elon Musk, the man who bankrolled the president and had full access to our government. He said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
For years, the left have been screaming that Elon Musk is the devil, but the second he says something bad about Trump or the Republicans, Granny here puts him up on a pedestal. You're not allowed to do that. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to see you next time, if there is a next time.